With the Four Nations final on Thursday, which Carolina Hurricanes player might be looking at winning a title and having some bragging rights over the rest of the team?
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes writer over at the Hockey Writers. Also do some AHL work at the Calder Times. Also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun Monday edition of the show as we get to update and kind of catch up on everything that has been the Four Nations Faceoff, as USA is in the final for Thursday. Now all it comes down to is who are they going to be facing in a very big game between Canada and Finland, to see how that's going to shape out while the USA does play Sweden. But before we jump into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, coming into the Four Nations, a lot of people thought it was going to be, Team Canada almost kind of running away with it with their high offensive firepower. On the offensive side of things, when you got, Nathan MacKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, all those guys. And, of course, for the Carolina Hurricanes, you do have Seth Jarvis, who's been mainly with Brad Marchand. Now they've had a few different centers. In the latest game against USA, they were, head-centered with, Sam Bennett. Of course, we know how crazy that game was, and it turns into basically 3 fights in the first 12 seconds. And with Seth Jarvis being on Canada, of course, you had Jaccob Slavin in the United States, who basically did a nice little reverse hit on Seth Jarvis in said game and has been playing a very, very great Four Nations. Is finally getting the recognition he deserves. As like I said, USC did beat Canada 3-1 and punched their ticket to the final on Thursday. Of course, you got Sebastian Aho and Mikko Rantanen, who did hook up for a goal. That was a Mikko goal. And now Finland's in a very huge game against Canada to see who has the chance to make it onto Thursday and take on the United States. But so basically this episode, we're going to talk about Jaccob Slavin in the USA, how they made it to the finals, talk about Seth Jarvis with Team Canada. Of course, you look at Sebastian Aho in Mikko Rantanen. Now, looking at the U.S. side of things, how about the fact that Jaccob Slavin leads the entire United States team of time on ice per game? And I'm talking not just the defense, but the entire United States team. Looking at the forwards, the only guy who's in the 20-minute range for USA is Austin Matthews, who's averaging 20 minutes and 16 seconds. Next best is Jack Eichel at 19:40. But then you look at the defense. Okay, yeah, you do have Brock Faber at 22 minutes and 6 seconds. But it is Jaccob Slavin at 23 minutes and 16 seconds of time on ice per game. And he actually does have 2 shots in the tournament so far in the 2 games. Both of them came against Canada. But here is the crazier part of all of it, is the fact that Slavin leads the entire team in plus-minus with a +5, and that's coming after having a +3 against Team Canada in their 3-1 win. And it's good to see the fact that Jaccob Slavin is finally getting his flowers, and kind of started out with Adam Fox, and then he's been with Brock Faber, and honestly, those two have been playing very well together, and one of the biggest shutdown lines. And that's coming out the fact that you do have Zach Werenski with 4 assists for Team USA in 2 games. And Brock Faber has 2 assists as well, and he's a +4. But overall, when you look at Jaccob Slavin, he is showing why he's the all-around, he is probably the best defensive defenseman in the entire NHL. And it's good to see that people outside of Raleigh are finally getting to see that. And that's kind of what it's so great about the best on best, is now you get to see, like, okay, how are the other guys around the league kind of stacking up now with, having all the best players in the world together. And now, like I said, now you see Jaccob Slavin finally getting his flowers, finally getting the recognition that he deserves, and why he should be in a lot of Norris conversations. But that's another discussion for another time. But it's good to see when you look at the best on best, and I've said it on social media, the All-Star game. Do we really even need an All-Star game anymore at this point? Because it's basically glorified pond hockey at this point, and you see what the NFL is doing with their flag football Pro Bowl, which is just kind of sad to see now. It's like even the Pro Bowl games aren't really as fun as they used to be, and it's just kind of like a whatever at this point. And then you look at the NBA, and then they just had their All-Star game recently, and I guess there was a little bit more defense than usual, and that's just turning it into a basically like street ball of not really caring about any type of defense, and that's why the games are always like in the upper 150s, 160s. But with the AHL, the All-Star game wasn't too bad for hockey, but it could be a little bit better. I do see MLB is always kind of up there because it's every team's represented, but there's something on the line when it comes to the World Series, who gets home field advantage regardless of record. But with hockey, it's kind of like you kind of felt that like, okay, the skills competition's okay. They're trying to figure out what to do with that. I still think the AHL does a pretty good job with that. But even with the All-Star game, it's just kind of feel like the NHL's kind of, they're trying to figure out what's best. And now they're going to best on best. Now it's four nations. But, there was a lot of news of World Cup of Hockey is coming back in 2028. And it seems like they're kind of scheduling that out to counteract the, Olympics and stuff like that. It's been 9 years since we've had best on best hockey. And just from the physicality, just from the intensity that's been this four nations, I don't see how you can go back to an All-Star game at this point. It's like, this is kind of it. And then you kind of cool to, add some other nations to it too. I know you're going to have, World Cup of Hockey, but it'd be kind of nice to have, other teams represented as well if you're going to do four nations or maybe expand this. I don't know how it's going to go, but yeah, it's just good to see that you're finally getting something that's, worth watching. And like I said, now for the fact you're getting best on best, now you're seeing guys like Jaccob Slavin, who gets overlooked a lot. When you're even like the diehard hockey nerds know how good Jaccob Slavin is, and even then he's still kind of underappreciated. And maybe people who don't really watch Jaccob Slavin enough or kind of understand his game, now they're seeing like, okay, I know this guy is definitely legit. And that's why for me, it's kind of like, okay, it's good to see that the hockey world is kind of, paying attention to who Jaccob Slavin is. Like I said, when you got a guy who's averaging over 23 minutes a game, leads the entire USA team, leads the entire team in a plus-minus of a +5, has 2 shots, has some blocks, has some huge hits too. Like I said, one against Seth Jarvis, which was a reverse hit. You're seeing a guy like Slavin finally getting what basically everyone's been preaching in Carolina is, hey, when Norris conversations come up, yeah, you're going to have your, Quinn Hughes and Kel McCarrs and, Erik Karlssons and stuff like that. And, Zach Werenski, good thing he's finally getting his recognition because he's finally healthy. But for a guy like Slavin, it's like, okay, yeah, but when you talk about what the definition of the Norris is, Jaccob Slavin is that guy. Yeah, maybe his offense isn't there, but that's not what it's there for. It's a defenseman award, and he's, like I said, the best defensive defenseman in the entire NHL. And now the fact that you're getting to see the hockey world being like, okay, yeah, no, this makes sense of why people are clamoring for why Jaccob Slavin is who he is. And I'm glad that he's finally getting it on a stage that's not a, like I said, he's not someone who's always going to be going to an all-star game. It's a lot of it's been Sebastian Aho. And, you're really seeing, Slavin on a stage where the hockey world's kind of focusing on a few guys instead of an entire league. But now you're in the four nations where it's okay, it's the four best, it's the, 4 teams, who's the best of the best. And Jaccob Slavin was, in my mind, a slam dunk pick, and now you're seeing it. And it's good. And I'm just excited to see what comes of Monday's game against Sweden. And then what's Thursday going to look like for the championship? How is the USA going to be ready to face whoever they do get, which could be Canada and Finland? Sweden might get in, but there's going to be a lot of circumstances that are going to have to go their way. But even then, it's like just to see Slavin finally get, what he's been deserving for so long of his career, and just people be like, yeah, okay, I realized how good Jaccob Slavin was. I didn't realize how good he was, and he's been so underrated, and now he's finally getting the appreciation and the, ratedness of who he is as a hockey player, and you love to see it. Now, we talked about Jaccob Slavin against how he played against Canada. Now we're going to go on the flip side and talk about Canada, how they've been, and talk about Seth Jarvis. So stick around, as we'll do that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we had to talk about Jaccob Slavin in segment 1, and now we're going to move on to Canada and talk about Seth Jarvis, how his tournament's been, and how Canada's been kind of looking as well. Now, for the actual tournament itself with Seth Jarvis, he's been playing a lot of, first game was kind of fourth line, second game was a lot of third line. He's basically been with Brad Marchand. Of course, they did have, Cicerelli at one point as their center. Now they've moved on to Sam Bennett. And Jarvis, he is even on the tournament, but does have 1 assist, so you'd love to see that from him. However, he's only been averaging 11 minutes and 7 seconds of ice time. And, guys, when you look at Sam Bennett's only played 1 game, Travis Konecny's only played 1 game, and the fact that even Sam Bennett, too, it's kind of crazy. It's the fact he's only averaged 7 minutes and 41 seconds. And even then, Brad Marchand's only averaged, he's only had 9 minutes and 53 seconds. But you look at Connor McDavid at 22, Nathan MacKinnon at 19, Sidney Crosby at 18, Mark Stone at 17, Sam Reinhart's even over 17 minutes. You're definitely seeing Canada, who's being used as what, a lot of people look at the Colorado Avalanche. Very top-heavy. A lot of their big boys are playing a lot of hockey. And like I said, when you got Marner at 20, McDavid at 22, it's kind of insane to think about when you look at just how top-heavy this roster is. And it's like the third line, even with Jarvis and Marchand, are not really getting the looks. Like I said, Marchand's playing less than 10 minutes. Jarvis is barely playing over 11. And you're seeing why Canada's in the spot they're in right now. If you look at the Canadians, and in that they have a lot of minuses on this team. I mean, that USA game did not do them any justice, where you have, Hagel, Cicerelli, Reinhart -2. Connor McDavid's a -2, and he's got 2 points. Sidney Crosby's a -1, and he's got 3 assists in 2 games. I mean, look at the defense. I mean, even the defense right now, it's kind of just like all you have is Drew Doughty with a point, and he's averaging over 20 minutes. Cale Makar is averaging over 28 minutes, which is absolutely insane to think about. Morrissey, Parayko, Tays all over 20 minutes. And you've had Jordan Binnington go for both games. Yeah, they won one, but they also lost one, and he's got an 96 save percentage and 241 goals against. When you look at the States, I mean, you have 2 guys on the defense that have 4 and 2 between Rinsky and Faber, but there's no minuses. I mean, there's 1 minus. It's a -1 to Noah Hanifin, but the rest of the United States team are either even or well above a plus. And looking at goaltending, Connor Hellebuyck in 2 games, 2 wins, a .957 save percentage, and 1 goal allowed. He's given up 2 goals in 2 games. And it's 1 goal to Canada and 1 goal to Finland, which is crazy to think about. And that's what I said, when you look at the flip side of it with Canada, goaltending isn't really that great. I mean, we all knew this was probably the weakest goaltending group of the entire tournament. We have Bennington, Hill, and Montembeault, and you're forgetting the back you have, Blackwood and Logan Thompson and all that. And so even the defense, I mean, you got Cale Makar. I mean, he's been playing, he's been sick, but no points in one game. Drew Doughty's got a point in 2 games. Morrissey, Parayko, Taves, nothing on the board for them. Even the forwards, I mean, you got Crosby, McDavid, and with the most multi-points and then a lot of ones. And nothing against Seth Jarvis, but you're kind of seeing where Canada is kind of in the spot they're in right now. Yes, they have all that firepower, but it's like there's no real – you see with the state team, like the United States, they're pretty, for the most part, everyone's getting their minutes. I mean, you're looking at, Matthew Tkachuk at 14, Matt Boldy at 12. Yes, you might have a couple guys like Gensel and Eichel above 19, Matthews over 20, but other than that, I mean, you got 13, 11, 16, 12, 14. Like, you're seeing, decent numbers, but everyone's getting their ice time. Even on the defense, you got Cale Makar at 28 minutes, and then, you look at, the rest of the group, it's like 18 for Harley, 15 for Sanheim. At least with the United States team, it's more even for their defense outside of, Slavin and Faber are both over 20. You have 17 for Rowinski, 16 for Fox, 17 for Hannafin, 19 for McAvoy. You can tell where the United States is more, and I've said this, it's that the USA is a more balanced lineup top to bottom. Like I said, Canada does have a lot of firepower when you look at Crosby, McKinnon, McDavid, Cale Makar, and stuff like that. But you're seeing how Canada is really relying on the big guys to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Like I said, it's almost like you're watching Colorado in a sense for Team Canada, where you have your big guys eating up a lot of minutes. And that's why, Canada had to beat Sweden they had to beat Sweden in overtime to get their win. And that's why they only have 2 points, because they got a win in overtime. And that's why you see them, only score a goal against the United States. And they were throwing nuclear lines together of, like McKinnon and, Crosby and McDavid together. And they were just throwing the kitchen sink at the United States, and they just weren't able to do that because, the USA is a very structured, defensively good team. And that's, if you want to stop firepower, have a really good defense. And that's what you saw for Team USA. And now you see Canada in basically a huge must win for them, because if they lose to Finland, they're basically not going to the final. And if they do win, they got to hope that Sweden doesn't really do anything against the States. And that's why Canada's in a tough spot where everyone's like, oh, Canada's going to run away with it because they got the firepower. But it's their goaltending, and their goaltending has not been great. So that's why they're just in a tough spot. And like I said, nothing against Seth Jarvis. He's been playing very well. I mean, for the the most part of with the 11 minutes he's had. Lucas does have an assist. Unfortunately, doesn't really have a shot in the tournament so far. He's one of 3. Crosby doesn't have a shot, surprisingly enough. I don't know how Sidney Crosby doesn't have a shot yet. And Travis Konecny in one game doesn't have a shot either. So Jarvis is one of 3 guys who's not put the puck on the net in terms of the forward core. Shea Theodore, who got hurt, only guy on the defense that hasn't had a shot. So it's just Jarvis, for the most part. I mean, you see them. Like I say, he's got the assist, which is nice to see, and how he did against Sweden. He's been very active. You can see why he was picked for Team Canada, but it's just the use of him hasn't really been there, and that's why it's kind of like you really can't blame Seth Jarvis for a lot of stuff, because he's just not getting the ice time. You're used to him getting 17, 18 minutes for the Canes, and now he's getting 11 minutes for Team Canada. And that's why they're struggling, because they're relying so heavily on their top 6 to do all the work. And their bottom 6 is just kind of like, okay, we just need you to fill some minutes at this point. Or you look at, guys like Jaccob Slavin, who's over 20 minutes again. Of course, he's a defenseman, but you're seeing why USA is benefiting from 6 points and 2 full wins is because they're doing the job that's necessary, and that's because they're a deep team. Canada, the defense is fine. Their firepower is on the offense is supposed to be, next level, and only scored a goal against the States, but it's their goaltending that's very weak, and for whatever reason, they've gone to Bennington twice now, and now it's like, do they go to him again? Who knows? And that's a huge game because, while Finland did lose pretty bad to the States, they did win in overtime against Sweden. Now they're in a spot where it's like if they win, they're in on Thursday against the United States. It's just, like I said, for Seth, I mean, you're happy for him the fact that he got there, he got picked, and he does have a point in it, which is nice, but not a lot he can do when Canada is like, we're just going to use you very small minutes. Like I said, even Brad Marchand is under 10 minutes, which is kind of crazy to think about. But, Canada is really relying on their top 6 guys to do all the yeoman work, and it's just kind of like, all right, we have the bottom 6 there, just we need them when we need them. That's kind of how it really is. So, like I said, you're happy to see Seth Jarvis there. You're definitely happy to see Slavin there as well. And of course, Slavin's having a bigger impact for the United States. And I'm not saying Seth Jarvis isn't having an impact on Canada. It's just the deployment of their lines just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. What does make sense, though, is the fact that you got Sebastian Aho and Mikko Rantanen making some noise for Team Finland. And now they've put themselves in a very good spot to see if they can make it into the final on Thursday, possibly against the United States. So we'll talk about them and how Finland's been doing here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonAHL. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonAHL today to get started. Once again, that's selectquote.com/lockedonNHL. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we talked about Canada, we talked about the United States. Now let's talk about Finland and the fact that you're looking at Mikko Rantanen and Sebastian Aho. Now, with Mikko Rantanen, does have a goal in the 2 games, is a -2. Sebastian Aho did get the assist on the Mikko Rantanen goal, and he sits at even after 2 games. Does have a penalty, and Mikko Rantanen does have a shot, which was the goal that scored it for Finland in the Sweden game, and then, of course, Sebastian Aho has 1 shot. Sebastian Aho averaging 18 minutes and 28 seconds of ice time, while Mikko Rantanen is doing 18:53. So they're definitely getting their minutes in for sure. Sebastian Aho, face-off percentage, 37.5%, which is actually the lowest on the entire team, with AR Call at 45.5, Rupe Hintz at 71.4, Capo Kakko at 100%, Anton Liddell at 40.9, and Alexander Barkov at 53.9. And, of course, Mikael Granlund at 100% as well. Overall, for Team Finland, they're definitely in an interesting spot where, they lost 6-1 in the United States to start the whole tournament, did beat Sweden in overtime. A lot of minuses on the team. And Terry Lehkonen with a -3, Teuvo Teravainen, former Hurricane, -2, Erik Haula, -2 as well. Mikko Rantanen does have a -2. Not the greatest, but, I mean, they're really trying to fight their way back into this thing. And, in terms of points, Mikael Granlund, 2 points, goal and assist. Patrick Laine also has 2 assists as well. A lot of once. Looking at the defense, Ole Mata 2 points, Henrik Jari with 1 point, and Nico Mikkola with 1 point as well, with Mikkola playing 23 minutes and 42 seconds. Esa Lindell is a -2, but averaging 26 minutes and 26 seconds. Looking at the goaltending, they did go to Kevin Lankton, got the win, which was against Sweden with a 291 goals against with an 875 save percentage. But the biggest question mark coming into this was how UC Saros was going to be, and let's just say he was a part of that loss against the United States, where he had a 6 goals against and an 813 save percentage. Not the greatest from UC Saros, but that's why you see Kevin Lankinen doing so good with the Canucks. It was kind of tough. It's a 291 goals against, but Finland did get the win in overtime against Sweden. Now it's putting them into a good spot of where they could be looking at facing the United States on Thursday, but of course they got to take care of business against Team Canada. So with Aho and Rantanen, they do have 2 points combined. With the fact that Aho was a part of the assist going into the Mikko Rantanen goal. Like I said, Sebastian Aho is an even, Rantanen is a -2. They are getting their ice time, though. They are pretty much up there, outside of those two. The only guy that has more time than them is Alexander Barkov at 20 minutes and 19 seconds in terms of the forwards. So, overall, you're very happy with how Aho and Rantanen have been playing for the most part outside of that really tough game against the States. But that's why you see the United States where they're at, why they've already punched their ticket to the final, because they got 2 wins and they have a very, very good team who scores a lot of goals and a really great defense who shuts them down. And it also helps, too, when you have what's most likely going to be the Vezina goalie of the season for the season in Connor Hellebuck. But for Finland, a lot of people are kind of questioning how is Finland going to do? Coming into the tournament, it was a lot of, they might win a game. The overall, the offense is okay. They lost a lot of guys on the defense, unfortunately. When you lose or he's getting right before the tournament, and you're kind of questioning, okay, how's the goaltending going to be? Because, Kevin Lincoln's been playing pretty well for the Canucks this season. How is UC Saros going to be? Because the Predators have been a pretty bad team, and that first game against the United States, you're kind of like, might have brought some of the national voodoo to Finland for the tournament. Of course, you also have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, but he hasn't really seen some ice time, and I won't be surprised if you see Kevin Lankinen back in the net for Team Finland. But overall, like I said, they are in a good spot. They have a chance to beat Canada. If they do, they're into the final, depending on if there's any other weird scenarios that's going to happen. But Finland, a lot of people thought, how are they going to be? It's like, okay, they're probably going to fight for a third place. But now they're in a very big game against Team Canada on Monday. It'd be like, hey, if you win, you're most likely in. And that would be very huge for them, just to see, okay, here comes an underdog Finland team. How are they going to shock the world? And it's just, I think with Finland, which makes them very interesting, is the fact that, they do play a very structured game of their own. They do play very much of their own system. And you can see where it kind of works if they're not having to deal with how you're going to face a team like the United States. Now, they did beat Sweden, but now you're facing a Canada team who's very upset after basically getting embarrassed by the States over the weekend. So Finland's going to put themselves in a very interesting spot. And the thing, too, is with Finland is that you don't really have Sebastian Aho and Mikko Rantanen together, which is kind of, we're wondering how that's going to be because, you got Mikko Rantanen on the top line with Barkov, and you got Sebastian Aho on the second line. So it's just, you kind of wish you saw them playing together. You saw them do it for a little bit for the fact that it did lead to the goal for Mikko Rantanen, but it's just kind of like, you kind of wish as Hurricanes fans that they're kind of together, but at least you're seeing that the fact that they are fighting for a chance to make it to a final, and hopefully they do. That'd be kind of cool to be able to see, okay, you got Rantanen and Aho. Okay, let's see how they do against the United States once again and see how they're going to do against Jaccob Slavin. But Canada's coming out, very, on fire and really, one who basically put the USA game away from them. And of course, the big question is Jarvis and Aho going to have, that little fun, tiff that, because Seth was like, I would like to fight Fishy. We all know how that with that quote that's going around. Don't know if it's going to do it, but it'll be a very interesting storyline going into this game. But overall, when you look at Aho and Rantanen, like I said, they do have a point each. One's got a goal, one's got the assist. Like I said, Finland also has a chance to potentially make some noise against Canada on Monday to hopefully make their way into the final. It'll be very interesting to see how that works out. But you got 3 of your 4 guys facing off each other on Monday in the Finland and Canada game to see who's going to be taking on the States. And of course, Jaccob Slavin and them are more than ready to see how that plays out. So it's going to be very interesting to see how everything shakes out when it comes to the Monday games with Canada, Finland, USA, Sweden, and basically who's going to take on the States in the final on Thursday. So definitely should be a lot of fireworks on Monday for sure for President's Day. But overall, like I said, you'd love to see that Jaccob Slavin's playing really well. Doesn't have the points, but, is locking a lot of ice time, finally getting the recognition he deserves. Seth Jarvis does have a point, did get an assist, but just you kind of wish that Canada would utilize him more. Now, Aho and Rantanen do, like I said, both have a point each. First game USA, kind of tough. Did beat Sweden in a very close game in overtime. Now it's like, okay, now you're playing Canada for a winner-take-all type of thing. So how are they going to stack up against a Canada team who's, like I said, are very upset, want to come back and revenge that loss against the States, and probably want to take it out on the Finns. So it's going to be a very interesting game for sure to see how Thursday is going to shape up for a final that does feature the States, and who is their opponent going to be. That is the main question. But guys, that will wrap up a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for taking your first listen of the day. If you want to find a second listen, well, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or where you listen to podcasts. If you want to follow me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at the Zachary Martin. I do have link trees in both my bios. Where you can check out all my articles at the Hockeyers or thehockeyers.com. Also check out the Calder Times if you want to check out my AHL content as well. I do have another podcast, which is the Surgecast, which you can find on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For this show, well, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio. Follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. If you're on YouTube, well, subscribe, hit the bell and turn on notifications so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button and let me know if you like the show as well. And in the comment section, if you're on the YouTube side of things, who are you hoping wins between Finland and Canada to see who they take on if they do face the United States on Thursday? Make sure to share the podcast with other Canucks to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoys their Monday as they get to watch more of the 4 nations face off. And until next time, as always, let's go Cans.